Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here. The Varietal Show is back. I am at one of my favorite wineries that you guys might not have been here, but you need to come here, Pennyroyal. And we are talking about Anderson Valley. Where's Anderson Valley? Mendocino County. You come up to Sonoma County, you take a hard left in our last town, which is called Cloverdale, and you come this way and you run into someone that's a very good friend of mine, Sarah here. Sarah Cahn Bennett, two parents. You guys might know a little bit about this. Ted Bennett and her mother, Deborah Cahn, are the founders of Navarro Winery, which is really one of the legendary wineries of this area. I've gotten to know Sarah over the past 20 years because not only did they start their own winery, this is the other part of the family that came out, and her mate started this amazing winery. But the fact is, she's also a legend in the cheese industry, and that is the Pennyroyal cheeses. And we do have those in front of us. We're going to talk about them on the show too. They are right here. You cannot eat them over the scene right now on the screen, but you will want to eat these when we finish with you. Sarah, thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure.
Last night, this is my little ding-ding here. I was at the Anderson Valley Film Festival a long time ago, but this is not it. This is the Anderson Valley Pinot Festival, and you hosted the amazing dinner last night, paella, by chance. If you go back on my Instagram, you can definitely see that video. She was there, like, sauteing things back there. She's doing it all. But I really wanted to talk to you about the wines, and then we'll talk about the cheeses too. Recently, we had a great wine competition. It's the North Coast Wine Challenge, and we give out really high awards there. You know, if they're gold medals and double golds, they might make it into the final round. And there was a wine in there that my team sent in, and we fell in love with it. I kind of had an idea of whose it was because it has 3 grapes in it, and they're all from the Pinot family. So Pinot Noir, a lot of people do not know this about Pinot Noir. It's a super genus. It's not just a grape. It also gave birth to other grapes, 2 of which are basically what we call mutations of Pinot Noir. One is Pinot Gris, one is Pinot Blanc. And if you just press Pinot Noir grapes by themselves, it's clear too, and that's what we're drinking. Oh, go figure. And it's in this beautiful little glass. You can't see it that well, but it says Pennyroyal Farm on here. And this is the Pinot Trio. And this is an amazing wine, Sarah, that you came out with a few years ago. And it's something different, but it is Pinot Noir, but it is in white form, you guys. This is a beautiful kind of like almost hay bale kind of color. It's so pretty. And you start to understand why these things really work here in Anderson Valley. This is a special valley, you guys. It actually starts from southeast and goes northwest, and it goes right out to the ocean if you keep driving. And it's a beautiful place. You grew up here. This is a really unique place. Tell us a little bit about, your family's winery, Navarro, successful, to say the least. But you got to do this, and what really led you to come here and start your own winery here?
So I went to grad school at UC Davis. I got my master's in viticulture.
UC Davis, go UC Davis.
Met our cheesemaker.
That's where I went.
Erica McKenzie chapter, who was living in the goat barn making goat cheeses, and we started talking about what farmstead cheese meant. And I grew up with my parents making estate bottled Gewürztraminer. Knew they took a lot of pride in growing their own grapes, making their own wine from those grapes, and so that was really one of my goals, was to make estate bottled wines, which is what Pennyroyal's farm wines is, and then our cheeses are all made from goat and sheep here on the farm as well.
Yeah, so where we are is right in Boonville. So you come over the hills, it's goes like this for a little while, but then you get here, you're like, oh, it's so worth it. And you get here, and goats like it here a lot. We like it here a lot. It is a very attractive place. You can see right behind us, actually that's the corridor, right kind of where my head is. You can see it right here is basically the corridor that's going all the way to Sonoma County. It goes through Yorkville Highlands too. That's another sub-appellation of this kind of bigger valley. It's on the higher range there. But we are in southern Mendocino County. If you were to just go up Highway 101, you would not come here. It just doesn't go that way. You have to go straight out this way, 128. It's a great route and very worth it, you guys. I love this wine a lot. She won the top award, best white wine at that whole competition. She's going to be honored at a tasting coming up in June that we're doing with the Press Democrat, and I'll be there, of course, because I get to taste your wine again. But, this was people, there were a few wineries that were doing this before you that were Pinot, it's what we call Pinot Noir Blanc. Okay, you're like, oh, what is Pinot Noir Blanc? It's when you press it with just very little time on the skins, so it actually comes out fairly clear. And then your blending here is just a beautiful blend of everything together. Tell us a little bit about how you started this little part of the program.
Well, so the Pinot Blanc is rather new for us for growing. We've grown Pinot Gris and Pinot Noir for quite a while. Pinot Blanc, we didn't plant any until 2014. Yep. So this vineyard is just two different clones of Pinot Blanc and just a spectacular fruit. And to me, that's when the wine, that burst of fruit when you get first come to the wine, that's what the Pinot Blanc adds.
Yeah.
I think the Gris gives it, there's these floral notes, and then the Pinot Noir, you add that kind of red fruit and a base to the mouth.
Absolutely.
Really makes the combination great.
Absolutely. We've got a great set of cheeses here. Which one do you like the best with this?
So Sauvignon Blanc and Chev are a classic pairing. So we make a cheese called Laychee, which is a Chev recipe. Yep. This time of the year, it's about 20% sheep milk, so it's a little higher fat content. Yep. But for me, this wine has a little bit more weight to it, so I actually prefer one of our surface ripened cheeses. We either make our Velvet Sisters, which is a Camembert style cheese, and then we have another
That's
surface.
that one in the front there, you guys. Okay.
And it just gets oozier and oozier as it ages. And then we have Bollie's Mollies is another surface ripened cheese. It has Penicillium candidum, which is the white mold you see typically on these cheeses. And then this actually has an older version of the same mold, Penicillium album, kind of gives it a cloud-like look to the outside of the cheese.
I'm going to eat this all, you guys. So just so you know, it's amazing. This has a great texture to it. That's one of the things about Pinot Blanc that really gets me is it's got a textural thing going on. So it's not just about, the Pinot Gris is great and it's very focused. It tends to have higher acid in the Pinot, whereas you're talking about texture with the Pinot Blanc. They're very different from one another, but they're not that far apart. They just have great flavors and they're very unique. And then you've got Pinot Noir too. When do you pick the Pinot Noir to go in here?
I'll actually go a little bit less ripe than rosé, trying not to get color.
Okay.
I mean, when you're making sparkling wine, for example, it's pretty easy to do a whole cluster press and not get a lot of color. When you get into those higher Brix levels, you deal with a little bit of extraction issues, so it's kind of a fine line you're balancing there. It's
pretty amazing, and believe me, wine is about not just drinking, but it's about eating and feeling like you've made the right decision, especially for me as a sommelier for a long time. And really, every time I come by here, I try to buy more cheese from her. Not just her wines, but her cheeses. And this is great. I mean, you always have great products here. We got to see them last night. They were totally on display. We were eating them. The aged cheese last night was really this is kind of it, you guys. And you can kind of see it here. And it's just an amazing cheese. I'm thinking a little bit bigger with that. I'm thinking about some stuff with tannins, and I'm thinking about saltiness there. So it's got a salty character to this. And now we're going to taste some Pinots, because we have to taste Pinots because we're at the Pinot Fest, you guys. And this is just a beautiful example of really the Pinot Noir here. This is the regular Pennyroyal. This is from just Anderson Valley. So is this all from estate, or is this?
This is all from estate as well. And actually, this is for all my Pinot Noirs at this point. I kind of went a little bit different focus and made it very small. So it's just this Pennyroyal estate.
Yep.
We have 3 different lots or sections of the vineyard. But I actually harvest. I think I made 14 lots of wine from the 15 acres of
Amazing.
Pinot Noir that we grow here.
Amazing. You know, you and I kind of met. You had just been in Davis for a while, and I think the first time we really got to know each other was when we came here for the Somme Journal. And I remember it was kind of like we were behind. We were kind of behind your mom and pop's place, Navarro, and you were talking about it. This was not here yet, and this is a beautiful. I mean, we're seriously. You come right into Boonville. You're not even in Boonville, and you're here. And so it's hard not to stop here, and you shouldn't because you need to stop here. And luckily, I got here right when everyone left. So that's why we've got a few minutes. We're going to a barbecue in a few minutes, too, which is going to be good.
Yeah.
But this is Pinot Noir. This is a very interesting area. A lot of you don't know this. But when it became an appellation here in 1983, so we are basically, this vintage is the 40-year anniversary of this. This is a really interesting thing that there were 500 acres of white grapes here, and there were 56 acres of Pinot Noir. Today, there's about 3,000 acres of Pinot Noir, and there's still about 500 acres of white grapes. And so it's a crazy thing in your growth. And to be really honest, I will say one thing about her mom, Deborah. She called me from London when I was writing that story originally 11 years ago because it was going to be the 30-year anniversary. And she told me all sorts of stories about what it was like back then. And it was so interesting to hear it from her. There's actually at Hush Vineyards down the road from here, about 10, 15 minutes down the road, there's a interesting little picnic table there that they have inside the house. And you're like, oh, really? Of all the things, like, that's your dining room table? That's actually where the papers were signed to send to the government to make this an appellation. That's why it's got some precedence there, you know? And so it's an interesting story. Your mom told me that who would have thought? You know, and I just love the fact that she was really into talking to me from London. That was a good one, you know? So here we go into Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir works here. You've got a lot of different plots out here. You know, you've planted at different points here too. Tell us a little bit about the vineyard and how it's structured out here.
Well, if you look out behind us, you'll notice the vines are a little bit higher than most vineyards.
Yep.
So we try to increase our soil organic material here. Yep. So we do that through a lot of ways. One was we started a dairy, and one of the great byproducts of dairy farming is on-site compost program. But we also developed the vineyard up higher so that we could graze sheep. So we have a herd of about 300 head of sheep. About 150 of them are baby doll Southdown sheep. So they're little chubby short-necked sheep that can't really climb up by the time they're two. Yep. So they'll actually suckle a lot of it. So we put sheep in the winter, but then we can actually go through this time of year and use the sheep to sucker and kind of clean up a lot of the green and the leaf litter too after harvest.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the thing is too, like there are a little bit higher kinds of plantings out here too. This is a little bit warmer area than where your mom and dad are. This makes them stress a little bit harder. Getting the nutrients and going up higher is a little bit harder for them. So it puts a little stress on them. Stress is a good thing for vines because it actually allows them to put more concentration into the fruit, and the clusters are not big and bountiful like they would be if you just let it flow on just a regular one. They are a little bit higher. This is a little bit different trellis system than you'll find about 10 minutes down the road. It's just it is a warm area here, but you've made it work. And these wines are really, there's a textural thing here that's soft and kind of just elegant and sophisticated. And there's a lot of fruit too. That's the great thing, is it's got a great balance. How do you strike that balance? You know, I mean, you've got so many different plots to work from here. Yeah. What goes into this one, which is just the kind of the Anderson Valley, and then we're going to taste this one, which is coming up next, which is the Monty Inn. One thing too, I do want to say to you guys, this area has a really, really rich history. It's gone through some phases, and one of those phases was a lot of mills here, wood mills. That were here, and this was all forested, and then the mills came in and they cut down a bunch of the trees in this valley, but it left this amazing this amazing stretch here that was just amazing. And then, it goes back to the 60s and the 50s of some vineyards being planted here because you could ripen it enough. But what were they planting? It wasn't Pinot Noir off the bat because Pinot Noir wasn't in vogue, you guys. So they knew they could ripen here. Your parents came in there in the late 70s, I believe, and, really successful with this. The whites were on, man. You guys, the whites were in. And that's what people were really drinking in the 70s. When we get into the Pinot Noir, that's really the reds. And if we would have had Pinot Noir back in the 70s, and if it was made like this, we might have an even bigger wine industry because really the moms and the people that were drinking, because beer was still in and it was still a big deal. Not that there wasn't Boonville Brewing Company and all this kind of stuff that was going on here. But this is a special area for this. And you've watched it grow up just like I watched Sonoma County. How's it really changed for you?
The style of Pinot, seeing Pinot be more widespread throughout the valley. I was actually talking to Jim Klein this morning about making Pinot Noir in the 90s in the Anderson Valley, and at that point Navarro had a small planting of Pinot Noir. We were buying some fruit from Farrington Vineyards, and we were talking about the style of my wines here from Pennyroyal, and I've always enjoyed kind of these lengthy, big wines that you get from Boonville, very different style than the leaner styles of the deep end of the valley. But to add my element and my farming practices to that, and especially for red wine, I actually think a nice canopy covering the fruit and not getting direct sunlight is great.
Very
it
important,
gets you
you guys.
a little more delicate tannin structure, and so I think I'm kind of imparting what I want from into Boonville fruit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This next wine we're going to taste real quick too. So this is called wrong one. Whoops. Monty Inn. So the other thing I was going to tell you is this area has some kind of interesting terminology. Let's just put it that way. It's called Boontling. And Boontling is a very interesting term, and I assume that Monty Inn is a term that was used here. It was kind of all these old people that worked at the mills and how it kind of progressed of the locals had their own thing. They'd kind of be saying stuff behind people's back who came here, because not that many people came here like they do today. And so it was just a very interesting time period. Tell us a little bit about how you got into Bootling, and when did you start saying Bootling language? As a child? Or when?
As a child, they used to actually teach it in our local elementary school. And I remember going to my 6th grade field trip, and they had a booth at the Exploratorium on Bootling. So it is an official language. There was apparently, I've heard rumors that there was actually, if you look in the Bootling books, it says that the history is, it was used by locals to talk about outsiders. But apparently most of the men were sheep shearers, a lot of the women tended to hops, and there was a male version of it and a female version of it. And of course, the male version was the only one that was documented. But it's still an amazing language. There's a lot of interesting words for things that you never want to teach your children. But there's some great words as well. So the downtown, the Boonville baseball team's diamond was actually exactly where this vineyard is, and if you look at old aerial footage, you can see the old diamond. But Monty Inn was one of their pitchers who was known for throwing his strikes. So this is 5 rows of the vineyard that I make as a separate wine. Just great. I've always loved the section of the vineyard and treat it like a baby.
It's not right here in front of us, but we tasted a wine last night that I really liked. Eye of the Needle, and that was part of it in the blend. Tell us a little bit about the Eye of the Needle and the different parts of this vineyard that were in the Eye of the Needle. And that is, once again, a term from the old days and the Bootling language.
So Eye of the Needle is a block that's on the far side of the property. The old downtown Boonville was where 253 and 128 combined together, and Eye of the Needle is a section of that road going over. But it's all clone 115 on SO4. So each one of these blocks I have different clone rootstock combinations. It's one of the interesting things about Pinot Noir is you can have two clones in the same vineyard that taste completely different. You can have sometimes even within a clone, just a change in soil profile. So it's one of the fun things that we get to do as Pinot Noir winemakers is just taste all the differences and variants that you get in the vineyard.
See why I brought her here, or why I came here for her? You know, this is amazing. So for the Pinots, now we're talking about, this one's got a little bit more bigger structural things going on in it than the first one. The first one's a perfect blend of just loveliness. One year when we used to do the wine competition here, there was a really great winery. It didn't last as long as we hoped it would, called Launderer. And I remember when we were there, and they had two high-end wines, and then they had just an Anderson Valley blend, which is kind of all the parts of their vineyard. And that one, I remember, it was my team that sent it in. It won by the largest margin of all time. It was like 81% of the votes all went for that one Pinot Noir. And I tasted it some years later because I had bought like a 6-pack of that right away when I knew that it was going to be number one. And it won by such a margin. It still held up really well. It was a really great wine, but it was a parts of different things. And so for this Anderson Valley one, for your one, what does it really work with here on this tray? Yep.
To me, our Boont corners, which is a raw tome style cheese.
The Boont corners, got it in the hand. Hello.
We sell it at 3 different ages. So the one that's cut as a wedge is our 2-month. It's 2 to 4 months. It's more like soft, pliable, greener textures. So you could almost go with a white wine for that. And then by the time it gets our vintage, which is 4 to 6 months, and then our reserve is 8 to 10 months, and it gets more nutty and a lot more different notes as you taste it. So
that's important. That's important too. Is about aging cheeses, you guys. A lot of people do not think it's pretty much the same thing with wine, where 99% of the wines get purchased and drank that within a day, if not a week, of what you're doing. When you age a wine, it really does take on different qualities, and it becomes more balanced, and maybe sometimes it just needs that, and the acid's really high, it needs to settle down, or maybe the tannins are too high and needs to balance with the acid. Cheeses are the same way, if you really do. Aging cheese is fun, you guys. Try it at home. Buy their stuff, okay, first of all. But, I think that's right. I mean, I think that this one is a very good example of that. You've got that, and this is the Boont Corners. I mean, you're talking about where it's from, right here. Pennyroyal. What is Pennyroyal?
So it's a plant that it's one of the smells that I associate with the Anderson Valley. As soon as you come into the Anderson Valley, it smells of pennyroyal. And I don't know a lot of places in the world that are as aromatically pennyroyal as this place. But it grows in a lot of wetter areas around ponds and such, but we'll see it occasionally in the vineyard, and it's one of the flowers that kind of is blooming, and the sheep don't eat it, and the goats typically don't eat it. So you'll see it in the vineyard under drip lines and such, and I feel like all the aromatics definitely make it.
There was one time that I had the moment, and it was actually at Black Kite's property, and it's like right on that side of the river, and I smelled something. It wasn't peculiar, it was very attractive. I was really into this. And I said, what is that? And I followed it, and it went right to this, looked like a weed, but it was a pretty weed. And I said, what is this? They said, it's Pennyroyal. And so I was like, oh, I got it. That's exactly, but it was so concentrated there because it was kind of like this bowl, and the river is right over there. That's Navarro River, you guys. It's a really amazing thing, and it goes right out to the ocean. It's brilliant. And it goes through redwoods before you get there at Navarro, and that's what her parents' winery is named after her, which is pretty smart. And we know it very well. Great winery, too. That's the other one. You got to visit Navarro. And Jim, we will say a word for Jim Klein. If you look up Chris Sawyer and the Varietal Show and Jim Klein, you will find the show that I did with Jim some years ago. It's pretty fun. And Jim's a good guy. He was here last night with us. This is an amazing thing to really talk about cheese and wine, because you really are an expert in this, and I've really watched you progress. I've watched everything that happens here, has been so wonderful to watch with you. And it's, you know, I come over here and I want to buy more cheese from her. I want to buy more wines from her. These wines are really amazing, you guys. And I think that you come to Anderson Valley, this is one of the first stops you need to make, or the last stop to take cheeses home with you. Depends on which one you want, or just do both. You know, just buy a bunch of cheese here, buy a bunch of wines here. I love this person. So for the more Monty Inn, what would be the cheese that you would pair with the Monty Inn?
Yeah, either the Boont Corners is great.
Yep.
Another option, it's not actually on the plate today, but we do a couple different flavors of our Laychee. So we have a blueberry version on here, but we also make a fennel pink peppercorn that kind of just makes it really savory.
Did you hear that?
And that
fennel
really just pairs just beautifully with the Pinot.
I want it. I want it. That's great tips from her. This is the person. This is Sarah, and it's been amazing to watch you and just to be here with you, to eat these cheeses, to drink these wines, but also award-winning wines, you guys. Anderson Valley is a small place versus, you know, Sonoma County is huge. We're huge versus this. This is a place that's very special for Pinot Noir lovers, for just wine lovers in general that want to escape, especially the Bay Area, that just want to go somewhere that's different. And you go through here, you stay here, not tons of hotels, but that's okay. You can camp here, you can do whatever you want. But it's worth it because you come through here, you get to meet people like this. And she was just in the tasting room today. I said, so you want to set up an appointment for tomorrow? No, I'll just be there. Don't worry, I'll be there. Yeah, because she is here. You know, the person behind the wine is here. And so is the great cheese master. She's back there. You know, all these things are happening here in Anderson Valley. It's a total experience. These wines are amazing. Do not forget the Pennyroyal. And anytime you see this on lists, at restaurants, in grocery stores, don't forget about these cheeses because they're out there and they make them right here. And these goats are right around the corner from us here that make these cheeses, that help make these cheeses. They are a little bit different than those grapes that are growing grapes. Those ones are being milked and they produce this. And that's the amazing thing about Anderson Valley, is about all the diverse flavors you can get here. It's here, you guys, and you just need to come more often, and that's why we're here together. So thanks for once again for visiting me and meeting her, because she's a wonderful person. And don't forget Navarro Winery too, because I love them. But it's been great having you on the show. Thank you once again. Cheers, you guys, and cheers to you.
Oh, cheers.